We'll move forward to item number 22. Item number 22 is adoption of a resolution approving development plan and regular coastal permit for the development of a 3-unit residential apartment complex located at 519 North Tremont Street within the non-appealable jurisdiction of the local coastal zone, 519 North Tremont Street Apartments, applicant Covell family. Yeah, open the public hearing. Great.
Disclosures from the council.
I had some staff and drove by the project.
Staff.
Staff only.
All material has been provided to the council, and for the public's awareness, just so you guys know what just transpired, on the agenda, on the city council agenda, there are certain times, certain items. Those are the public hearing items. Tonight, those two items were item number 22 and item number 23. Item number 28, the one we were just hearing, wasn't a public hearing item. That's why it was heard before 6 p.m., in case there's any confusion related to that. So continue, Scott. Thank you.
Mr. Nightingale?
All right. Honorable Mayor, council members, I'm Scott Nightingale from the Planning Division, here to present agenda item number 22 for the adoption of a development plan and regular coastal permit for the demolition of an existing single-family home to construct a 2-story, 3,500 square foot, 3-unit apartment complex located at 519 North Tremont Street. The applicant is Covell family, and he is present today. As stated in the introduction, it's a demo of an existing single family to construct a 3-unit apartment complex with a 1,554 square foot 5-car garage on an existing 5,000 square foot parcel. The proposed 28.2 foot tall building height would be in compliance with the August 24th, 2017 building height exceptions policy aimed at reducing the impacts associated with any type of rooftop structure. The units would range in size from 956 to about 1,142 square feet. Each unit would be about 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. They would consist of their own private balcony space and have their own garages. This project did go to the Downtown Advisory Committee back in December 13, 2017, where it was voted 4-1 with committee members O'Doherty and Franklin and Higgins absent, and Hankins as a no vote, to recommend approval to the Community Development Commission. Here's an image of the site. The site is located 1 parcel southwest of intersection of North Tremont Street and Surfrider Way. It is zoned within Subdistrict D5 of the downtown zoning area, which permits single-family and multifamily developments and allows for a density of up to 43 dwelling units per acre. It's surrounded by other multifamily developments pretty much in all directions, with the exception of a vacant lot directly to the east. And you have row homes just on the other side of the alley there, single-family row homes to the west. Here's an image of the site. This is the 5,000 square foot lot existing with the single family. The single family is an approximate 700 square foot home, which was constructed back in the 1920s. Per the attached historical California record of survey, the home holds no historical significance. Access to this site, here's an image of the proposed site plan, would occur from the rear alley, which is just off the west elevation. And like I said earlier, the development would consist of 2 buildings, as you can see in the image here. You'd have the garage, where you would have one of the units garage access directly off the alley, and then a private drive for the other 2 units. Here's a more detailed layout. So here you'd have Unit A, Unit B directly above that. Unit C would be above the 5-car garage, and they have a shared roof deck, which is accessed off this external stairwell. And the maximum height to the parapet wall, or actually the patio cover on the roof deck, is only at 28.2 feet, and the maximum allowable height here is 35 feet. So they're staying well under the required height. Here's an image of the elevations. The project architecture is a mix of contemporary and American craftsmanship. building would be a mix of stucco and horizontal wood sidings, asphalt shingles, wood exposed corbels, decorative wall tiles, frosted glass garage doors, and accent gable roof features. It's consistent with what's in the neighborhood. You somewhat have an eclectic mix of architecture. And here's delineation here showing the maximum height of the structure being well under, like I said, the 35-foot height requirement. The proposed landscaping would consist of a drought-tolerant landscape palette with low-lying shrubs, succulents, ferns, vines, and enhanced paving and canopy trees, which would complement the proposed development as well as the neighborhood. When reviewing this project, staff reviewed the project based on the following findings for approval. The general plan land use compliance, it achieves a balance of residential land uses, also provides a good transition between the high density and the single family that exists in the neighborhood, and the proposed residential number of units is compatible and appropriate for this location. It's also consistent and meets all the required development standards, and it meets the required findings for the local coastal program, won't have any adverse effects on public coastal access, nor would it have effects on views or parking. So with that, staff recommends that the Community Development Commission confirm issuance of the CEQA exemption and adopt the project resolution for approval of the development plan and regular coastal permit. This concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
At this time, the applicant can come forward if they wish to.
Thank you. I'm Ken Chris. I'm the architect on the project. Haven't been here in a while. Hello, gang. I'm still alive. The project was fun. It's a leftover piece of property from Mom, and it's kind of blighted, so they happened to do an investment in the community. They both the owners of the Covell Family Trust live here, and they're fortunate enough to be able to handle building a really nice addition to this particular area in our community. With saying that, I hope we get your support, and do you have any questions? Oh, what, sir? Yeah, but then my wife bought some horses. So I'm pretty sure I'm never going to retire. Oh, I didn't give you my address. Should I do that? 13930. I love the name of this. Misty Oak Road. Beautiful name, in Valley Center, California. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing item. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this specific item may come forward at this time. Mayor Weiss, I see none.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Move adoption.
Deputy Mayor Lowry.
I have a question about the that roof that's on top of the building that's like open. What do you call that at this point in time?
We're describing that as somewhat of a patio cover.
Patio cover. Is it a rooftop deck in someone else's?
It's a shared rooftop.
Shared
deck.
rooftop
Yeah, it's
deck.
above the second unit.
Okay, and you stated that the 28.2 feet is the height of the building. Does that include the rooftop, the peak of the shaded area, whatever it's called?
That is correct. It's right to the peak of the cover there.
So there's one of these that I saw last week when I was on the native plant tour in the Seaside neighborhood, and it's a two-story house, and it has a rooftop deck or whatever it's called with a fixed roof on it with the plywood and shingling materials, and they were having a full-blown party up there, and I don't understand how at what point did it go from just having a canopy or umbrellas or parasols on these spaces to actually having a room except for the walls? Is that just a normal request that's made currently?
Mayor and council members, the zoning ordinance allows rooftop structures to exceed the maximum zoning height. In this case, the rooftop structure is actually below the maximum building height, so there's not an issue with an exception to the height. In terms of what goes on up there, we don't regulate that. The zoning ordinance doesn't specify whether you can have a rooftop party or not.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Councilmember Feller.
Thank you. I'm curious, and maybe the
property owners can say, is this from pre-1979? So the property taxes might go up on this a little? Just, yeah, substantially, I'm sure. So I when I drove by it, I thought, boy, I wish I could buy that and just go live there with my wife. And but I'm sorry you're taking that away, but it probably had to be a great little house for a lot of years. And but this will be a great addition down there. Thanks.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0. Item number 23 is adoption of resolution approving tentative parcel map, development plan, and regular coastal permit to allow the construction of a 3-story, 2-unit condominium development located at 152 South Meyer Street within the non-appealable jurisdiction of the local coastal zone, 152 South Meyer Street condominiums, applicant Chris Colonnese.
Open the public hearing and start with disclosures.
Staff and I drove by that side as well.
No disclosures.
Staff.
No public.
Staff only.
All materials have been provided to the council.
All right, good evening. Scott Nightingale here from the Planning Division, here to present agenda item number 23 for the adoption of a resolution approving a tentative map, development plan, and regular coastal permit to construct a 2-unit condominium on 0.1 acres at 152 South Meyer Street. This image here is a rendering of the proposed development. The applicant is present, and his name is Chris Colonnese. Just to note, there is a change in the resolution. Condition 29 has been revised. We're changing the word from minor grading permit to precise grading permit. It was found that there is a septic tank on site, old septic tank, that has to be removed, so there'll be some additional earthwork that exceeds the 200 cubic yards threshold. So we're changing from minor to precise, and the applicant's aware of it, and he's agreed to the condition. So the proposed development, like I said in the introduction, construction of a 2-unit residential condominium. It's 3 stories with a roof deck. It complies with the August 24th, 2017 building heights exception policy. There's a proposed 2-car tandem garage for each unit that's accessed off of Meyer Street. The residential units would be attached by a common wall and consist of a mirrored floor plan. Here's a detail of the unit size. You have 3,239 square feet would be each unit's square footage. Each unit would consist of 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. They would have their own private balcony space, which consists of 192 square feet, and the rooftop access tower would be 139, and their own private rooftop area per each unit would be 947 square feet. And the 2-car tandem garage is an enlarged 2-car garage, which is approximately 690 square feet. This project also went to the Downtown Advisory Committee, where it was reviewed and recommended approval back on January 24th, 2018. It was approved 5-0 for recommendation. The site is located northwest of the intersection of Tyson Street and Myers within the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. This blue box here is delineating the area. The property is zoned within Subdistrict 5 in the downtown zoning area, which permits single-family and multifamily developments. The surrounding developments here, you have an eclectic mix of developments. You have existing single-family on both sides of the property. We actually have an approved development plan to build a 4-unit condo complex just north of this site. Just to the east, you have the city's public parking, paid parking lot, and directly to the west, you have an apartment complex. The project site, as you can see in the image here, is vacant. It's a 4,356 square foot lot. There was an existing single-family home that was demolished back in 1970. The site doesn't actually exist with adequate access, so curb cut that's existing, the smaller curb cut, will be removed and reestablished at the center of the property, and the paid parking stalls will be realigned to meet the city standards. And here's another image of that smaller curb cut. The 2-unit condominium complex will meet the development standards in terms of height, density, setbacks. Each unit would be mirrored in a floor plan. Here's an image of the proposed architecture. It's more of a modern type of contemporary design, which consists of concrete cast walls, projecting balconies and awnings, vinyl horizontal sidings, dual glazed windows, wood slate wall attachments. The contemporary architecture design and elements were carefully chosen to match many of the newer developments that are within this area and along Myers Street. The proposed development is similar to many of the approved developments that we've approved along Myers Street in terms of bulk and scale. We actually worked with the applicant to reduce the height of the rooftop structure to meet the building height exception policy. And that's what you would see from the looking towards the north. That's the south elevation there. With that, staff reviewed the project based on the following findings. General plan land use compliance. It achieves a balance of residential land uses with the multifamily condominium complex. Provides a good transition between the high density and the residential and single family that's existing in the area. The proposed residential use and the number of units is compatible for this area. Like I said earlier, it does meet all the development standards in terms of the zoning ordinance, and in addition, meets the local coastal program. In terms of findings, there will be no public coastal access impacts, nor will there be public coastal view impacts or public parking. So with that, staff recommends that the Community Development Commission confirm issuance of the CEQA exemption and also adopt the project resolution for the tentative map development plan and regular coastal permit, and also note the change that I stated for the condition. With that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
At this time, the applicant can come forward if they wish to.
Good evening. My name is Chris Colonnese. Scott rhymes with mayonnaise. That's how you remember how to say it. I'm a longtime Oceanside resident. My kids went to St. Mary's School, and I'm interested in kind of helping anything that positively develops in this town. And I think that the project that we've proposed would be a definite positive addition to the neighborhood, the downtown district, and to the properties surrounding 152 South Myers. I do want to mention, because Scott alluded to it, regarding that the rooftop structure. We did work with planning at length. These buildings have reverse floor plans, and we had wanted to get an elevator all the way up to the rooftop deck, but we I think reached a reasonable compromise. We did get under the 10% allotment, and we're just running stairs up there and no additional space. Similarly, as it relates to the driveway, we would have preferred 2-car, not the tandem. I think most people would prefer that. I think the aesthetic on the building is improved by the fact it's a tandem with only one single garage door, and it also lessened the impact on the parking. So for the street parking, we didn't have to eliminate what otherwise would have been required of us to get 2 side-by-side garage spaces for that building. So, we're enthusiastic about the building. We think it'll be an addition to the neighborhood, and if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time, we'll move forward. This is a public hearing item. Any members of the public who wish to speak on this specific item may come forward at this time.
Close the public hearing. Councilmember Kern.
Now you can back up. I can ask the question. We had to wait till the public hearing was closed before we can ask the question. These are 2 rather large units at 3,000 square feet. We have a housing crisis in California. Why, and being this close, why not like a 4-unit complex or something along that lines?
Looked at the 4-unit floor plans and actually looked at prior development on the street, and then what has been commercially feasible, what's been, candidly, what's moved, what hasn't. and took a lead, a directive, based on the past 5 to 7 years of what's been going on in that block. Just to the south, there's a very similar building on Myers Street, 2 larger units. And I think the building's beautiful. I think it's,
It looks nice.
It actually sold, the unit sold a lot quicker. I retained, we did some analysis also on floor plans, and when you put 4 units in high density in that small a building, you make a lot of compromises on the usability of the floor plans. And candidly, I think that's why one other building that's still got units for sale, that's 7 years old now on that street, hasn't been able to sell those units. So you also have to sacrifice elevators. And, the senior community, I think, is prejudiced by that. I think that people with disabilities are prejudiced by that. So I thought that this setup made sense for that reason. Plus I come from a big family, and I know there are big families out there that might want a larger unit, and it's dense enough there. I don't think that having it a little less dense is a bad thing either.
Oh, no, and I'm going to move approval. I just, we have this housing crisis, and the idea of, and to talk about densifying the urban core and densifying those areas close to transit like this one is, I just, to see just a 2-unit where we could probably got more units out of it. But I'm a property rights guy. You have the right to develop the property where you want. I just needed to ask the question of why not. So anyway, I move approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Feller?
I'll second that. When I drove by, the lot right north of that, Scott, was 4 units, and it's been approved. Is that, am I correct?
Oh, Councilman Member, that's correct. It was approved for 4.
Okay.
4 units.
It's pretty much the same size lot, I think, along there. I think it's a great addition for that particular area of Myers. There's a lot of apartment-like buildings on that street, so I think you're just buyer beware. You are going to be next to the train tracks, so just in case you hadn't seen it out there behind you.
But we'll have a quiet zone.
Councilmember Sanchez?
I just have one other thing, and that is for staff. When I was driving by, directly behind this property, there's graffiti on a NCTD sign. Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Thank you. And I do appreciate that you're an O-sider, with respect to the project. I'm going to respectfully not support this project. I actually don't like tandem. My concern, especially for a 4-bedroom, 2 units, I imagine when you sell it, it'll probably be to someone who'll be using it for vacation rentals, and as some end up being advertised for, like several parties not, having fun, but parties in terms of individuals. And so I don't think we've gotten to the point where we don't have our cars. We're still traveling with our cars, even though we've got the best public trans in the region. I feel we're still not there, and so 10 years from now I'll be saying I should have voted in support. But right now I still feel that we're having problems with the parking and the tandem. I think people tend to just not really use it. Put 2 cars in tandem. I think people generally either use it for storage or just put 1 car. So, but I do appreciate your vision. It's not a product that I don't feel comfortable with right now. So I respectfully am going to be voting against. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 401. Sanchez, no.
Let's finish 28.
Yes, finishing item number 28, we'll pick up right where we left off with the speakers. Our next two speakers are Janet Azzaro, followed by Lauren Falstich, and I'll just remind the public once again, we have a decorum policy in place, so if you could follow that, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening. My name is Janet Azzaro. I know so many teachers in the Carlsbad Oceanside area. I've lived here 40 years, and I've watched Oceanside's reputation change for one of, oh no, you don't want to go north to Oceanside, you want to go do your entertaining, do your fun stuff in Encinitas and areas like that. So knowing all these teachers, we talk about it often, and we want you to understand how teachers are so concerned about how hard it is to improve the quality of their children's lives and the education, and how quickly it can be undone. Here in North County, the cities of Carlsbad, San Marcos, Escondido, Encinitas, Poway, Solana Beach, and Del Mar do not feel the need to bring commercial pot businesses into their cities. And so I wonder why you do. Your law enforcement and fire departments don't want it. I haven't been able to hear from them very often, but it's very questionable to ignore their considerable expertise in the kind of issues that it could bring to the city. Commercial pot sales and businesses like cultivation and manufacturing are not low-profile ventures, and they will affect the way media will describe our city and really confuse youth. Since the city already allows for pot deliveries to patients, the only people served by these proposed ventures are pot profiteers. And so I think it's really difficult for teachers and for parents to say no to their kids and tell their kids to say no when it looks like their city's saying yes. So thank you.
Hi, good evening. Nice to see you all again. I'm just going to piggyback off where she left off. I'm Lauren Falstich, and I'm a teacher as well in the area. And I know that adults' responsibility is to support the safe passage of youth through childhood and adolescence, or in the case of city council members and staff, to support laws and policies that guide the youth through these times with minimal damage. I'm concerned about pot being grown and marijuana edibles and vape pen vials with THC being produced in Oceanside and then shipped all over California and most likely the US. These actions are not the role model of valuable, healthy, important, intelligent, and a wise choice making that the children and teens of Oceanside deserve. I'm concerned that pot grown and pot edibles produced in Oceanside will be diverted to the youth. We already know that California grows 5 to 12 times the amount of pot consumed in California. So where does this excess go? Will it be diverted to the youth? Of course it will. That's where it always goes. Oceanside is the home of educators, pediatricians, coaches, youth-serving organizations, youth faith leaders, not pot growers and producers and distributors. Prop 64 was a mandate to decriminalize the transportation and personal indoor grows of up to 6 pot plants. Possession and distribution of medicinal pot had already been decriminalized. Only pot profiteers read that vote to be support for commercial marijuana cultivation sites or manufacturing businesses. How awful would it be to live or work near a pot business or a farm, with their potential for increased smell, traffic, water consumption, and with a crop that has value that will encourage invasive burglaries, loitering, and stealing, and necessitate around-the-clock guards who will most likely have to be armed. I'm opposed to Oceanside losing their reputation as a family-friendly place with great weather and dedicated schools. Thank you.
Our next two speakers are Damian Johnson and Grace Rapp.
Good evening. My name is Damian Johnson. I've had the opportunity to share some of my concerns for Oceanside regarding the commercializing of marijuana based on my personal experiences as a father of 5 and my professional concerns as a director of a skilled nursing facility. I want to show my support for the thoughtful comments of the members of Police and Fire Commission as they express their significant and evidence-based concerns for public welfare and community safety. I also want to confirm my agreement with the thoughts of the Economic Development Commission that were not included in that staff report, and I think that was a significant flaw. They asked really important questions regarding Oceanside being the city that grows pot and manufactures marijuana products like edibles and pop vials used in vaping devices, which are such a problem for our teens. How does that affect the city's reputation as a vacation destination or contribute to the family-friendly attractions already in the city or in the future? Every decision the city makes has financial and social impacts, and I think the citizens expect a comprehensive financial impact study so we have a thorough understanding of the financial, staff time, and resources and the cost to surrounding businesses and residents. Marijuana businesses, whether it's sales, cultivation, or manufacturing, require an inordinate amount of city resources to process, permit, and examine, and to inventory and to enforce, so that citizens are protected and neighborhoods are protected from loitering, robberies, assaults, mismanagement of product and money, and diversion to those under 21. I also wonder, from what I see in San Diego, where one pot grower described getting a permit to grow pot as the golden ticket if your local farmers won't be bought out. I also wonder, as a businessman, if this over-attention to one business sector, the agriculture, is fair-minded to other business ventures who aren't singled out for special consideration. Thank you.
My name is Grace Rapp. I am in 9th grade here in North County. I am very confused about what the City Council is promoting. Teens look to our elected City Council persons to model what are healthy and wise decisions, and the decision to bring marijuana businesses to Oceanside is puzzling. Since marijuana always makes its way to teens on our campus, from 18-year-olds and other adults, we don't need the City Council to contribute to that. My grandparents live near a pot shop in San Diego that advertises in North County magazines and sponsors carnival events at its location. It is bad for the surrounding businesses and residents, and they have sent code enforcement violations to the city. However, the code enforcement is too swamped to handle it. In closing, I would like to say that this situation does not improve the quality of life or safety for anyone in Oceanside, especially teens. Thank you.
Our next two speakers are Bob Natella and Dwayne.
Hello, Council. Bob Nutella, Oceanside. Thanks for your time. Regarding the approval on the pot cultivation, if you consider the change that they offer, I think that makes a lot of sense for them to move forward. I will say that I did attend the 12 to 15 hours of public speaking, and there's a big confusion, and part of that's probably the pro-cannabis medical cannabis advocates. Is there's not a really clear definition between adult use and medical use, because most of the people that marched up throughout the days and hours, I don't think anyone's against medical cannabis. I think all the people that were speaking and that continue to speak, and the teens that speak and the children, they're all against adult use. I think we need to try and wrap our arms around a medical strategy. And if you put your arms around a medical strategy, there's roughly 45,000 citizens that are 55 and older in Oceanside. UC San Diego has just done a study where they feel that, or they know that 20% of this group will be trialing or utilizing cannabis, CBD, THCA, and that number will probably go up. So just with a pure number of 20%, that's 8,000 citizens in Oceanside that will be utilizing cannabis. That's a big number, and that's the people that we should be taking care of. I think it's the parents' job to take care of their children, like I had to and other people had to when they were growing up. So let's try and take a step back, define the medical piece, and really go after it. Then you can have a gold standard that everyone can look up to. Thanks for your time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, Dwayne Urquhart, Green Hills Road, South Morro Hills. I want to first commend the City Council for taking on a very challenging topic, and also for the hard work the staff has put in and all the input from your safety personnel. It's been a very thorough and enlightening experience. Regarding the cultivation, let's please recognize that a greenhouse is a commercial business. As a commercial business, it needs infrastructure. People have to be able to drive to work. Employees drive their cars to work. Trucks need to go to the greenhouses. They need to deliver materials. Those materials or products need to be shipped out. It does create noise. It does create dust, and there's the potential odor. So the idea that there is some spatial separation is appropriate and wise to help mitigate some of those impacts. When the original staff developed the ordinance, they had a 10% coverage or 22,000 square feet, whichever was less. And if you do the math on that, that essentially translates, for most part, into a minimum 4 or 5 acre parcel. Now, 4 or 5 acre parcel isn't really large, it isn't too small, but it has enough usual depth and dimension to be able to give some spatial separation to be able to mitigate those potential impacts. On the current ordinance, that coverage, at least the reading as I understand, has been increased to 20%. Now, if you again do the extension of that, that would allow a 22,000 square foot greenhouse to be put on as small as a 2.5 acre parcel. Now, I know a lot of residents in South Morro Hills that live on 2.5, 3 acre parcels, and they consider those large residential parcels. I don't see any outcry or interest in those folks necessarily having a commercial greenhouse operation in their backyard and or their neighbor's backyard, not to mention the issues that you have to deal with septic, leach field extensions, and the like. And yet, there's a caveat, which is the setback consideration, which would prevent some of these things that, as you heard from other testimony, may impact some of the larger or medium-sized parcels owners. So I would suggest you consider a compromise. I would suggest you reconsider reinstating the 10% coverage and lowering the 1,000-foot setback to something more reasonable like 400 to 500 feet. Thank you.
Our next two speakers are Kathleen Lippett and Dallin Young.
Good evening, Council. My name is Kathleen Lippett. I work with businesses, youth organizations, and churches that have been displaced by marijuana businesses. I want to thank Councilmember Sanchez for her concern and respect for procedural processes, questioning the propriety of creating an ad hoc committee in the first place. Her comments on the obligation as well as the wisdom of following established protocol were reassuring that there was still an adult in the room. It's clear she takes her position on behalf of the city's public good seriously. The bias and partisanship that dominated Lowry and Kern's bipartisan ad hoc committee was insultingly obvious. It was a strategy to do an end run around the city staff and council members less disposed to marijuana commercialization and to violate council and city process and protocol. When the committee was populated with fellow marijuana apologists, any doubt that the committee would begin from a neutral viewpoint was dispelled. In research, there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. By creating an ideological echo chamber, the committee's outcomes were predictable. But Deputy Mayor Lowry went a step further by openly being disrespectful and not allowing opposing comments from experts. He stalwartly refused to entertain alternative opposing expert opinions. The antithesis of preventing the initiation or delay of youth drug use would be to increase availability, access, normalization, and promotion of such drugs, and allowing an industry to provide their own self-serving messages of harmlessness and contrived therapeutic value based on anecdotal and testimonial hearsay, and allowing marijuana lawyers, carpetbaggers, and profiteers to advocate and lobby city officials. If we invite drug dealers into our community, we should not be surprised when they behave like drug dealers. Please don't. Please support your experts, not your ideologues. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Dallin Young, and I am with the Association of Cannabis Professionals, and we are against the ordinance approved by Council in its current form. Providing safe access for patients is one of our primary goals, and Council's inability to allow for retail operations in Oceanside is completely unacceptable. By not allowing for these, you have forced patients to turn to the black market. The closest licensed operations are in Santa Ana, San Diego, and far into the unincorporated areas of San Diego County. Nothing is nearby, putting patients in a very troublesome position. Second, sensitive uses approved by Council are incredibly onerous on anyone trying to operate. Grocery stores, sporting goods stores, and theaters as defined as youth-oriented land have nothing to do with the industry that we are trying to create. Grocery stores sell alcohol, sporting goods sell knives and guns, all of which actually kill people, yet these are given the same type of requirements as cannabis operations are. There have been no recorded deaths from consumption of cannabis, period. Third, the youth. Let me be very clear. Retail operations do not lead to any significant increases in youth use. This is what we have seen in every single state, every single county, and every single city that have passed regulations. When it comes to buying and selling of legal cannabis from a licensed store to anybody else, that is illegal, regardless of age. This should absolutely be prosecuted, especially when youth are involved. This is true when it comes to alcohol, and it is also true when it comes to prescription pills. This is a black market, and this is exactly what we are trying to fight as a legal cannabis industry. In conclusion, we are against the ordinance in its current form and are currently exploring other options outside the purview of Council. Thank you.
Our next two speakers are Susan Robertson and Scott Priest.
Hi, I've never done this before, so I hope I'm doing this okay. All right, my name's Susan Robertson. I've had to drive to Irvine, Los Angeles, the city of San Diego County. I've spent thousands of dollars in other counties to purchase medical cannabis. I started using it in October of 2016 because after 30 years of using prescription drugs and over 40 different drugs, my health has been destroyed due to these prescription drug side effects such as suicidal thoughts, Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, autoimmune, fibromyalgia, osteoarthritis, anxiety, panic disorder, ADHD inattentive, CPTSD, depression, bipolar II disorder, acid reflux, insomnia, weight gain. Did I say major depression? Hashimoto's, just to let you know, is an autoimmune disease that destroys my healthy thyroid gland. My doctors at Kaiser are unable to heal all these conditions with their prescription drugs, and after 6 psychiatric hospitalizations. I voted to legalize cannabis in California. Stop the stigma. I'm a recovering alcoholic with 28 years sobriety from alcohol. I'm not a drug addict. Do I have to move and relocate to Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and bring my tax money revenue with me to states that will embrace me? I need safe, professional, distinguished access on a local level. I shouldn't be relegated to dealing with shady operators or have to drive hours to purchase. I want solid local options for purchasing quality, legal, regulated products from locally owned professional businesses. Denying adults access will not make children safer. I choose cannabis for its medicinal qualities, and I choose it over dangerous and addictive drugs prescribed by a doctor. I should not be relegated to being labeled a stoner or an addict. Nor should I have to conduct business in the shadows, drive hours away, or settle for non-state regulated quality products. I urge you to put dispensary or, at the very least, Type 9 delivery licensing regulations and bring safe, professional, distinguished access to Oceanside. Please, City Council, put back in dispensary or Type 9 delivery regulations to the ordinance as put forth by the ad hoc committee on March 28th. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I apologize for my attire. I just came from soccer practice. That beautiful facility at the Real Salt Lake Academy that was built where Gold Hill used to be. It's marvelous. There's like 8 soccer fields, indoor, outdoor. You're not familiar with the facility? It's because we don't have it. The reason I bring that up is the decisions that we make affect our lives, affect our youth. I'm a soccer coach. I help with the Scouts. I'm a dad. My wife's a teacher. The City Council's consideration for marijuana regulation has brought the media coverage to the city of Oceanside. I read the UT from time to time, and in fact, the only business I've ever seen featured on the front page of the local section of the UT was a small marijuana consulting business located in Oceanside Strip Mall. I'd ask ourselves, is this the best that Oceanside can get in the business section of the UT? I realize that Oceanside City Council cannot stop the media, but it is a harbinger of things to come. It hardly brings a shine to the name of Oceanside, for example, like the great Iron Man that we had here this last weekend. I'm wondering why we, our City Council, would even consider pot growers that will contribute to the excess of pot that are already grown in the state of California. I've mentioned before, we have access in the state of California that goes outside of California, and that's against federal and California law to transport marijuana across state lines. Why do we need more of it? And why do we need it in the city of Oceanside? The majority of other cities inside of North County don't want it either. So do I ask, do we want the dregs of society to just come to Oceanside to get it? Because they can get it legally. It can be delivered to their house. They can grow up to 6 plants. They can exchange it. We don't need more of it. Since 1996, patients and their caregivers have been exchanging their marijuana under the auspices of the Attorney General guidelines, which were published. Delivery services from all over the county and out of the county also have been supplying them. The city made some sure that they're already there. Now, it's mysterious that the delivery services haven't even registered with the city of Oceanside, and that it speaks volumes to what this industry will fight for. No regulation, no law, and no guidelines. And now anyone can transport pot and grow 6 plants, as I mentioned before. It's time to do the right thing. It's time to make decisions for the positive aspects of the city of Oceanside. I thank you for your time.
Our final speaker is John Kramer.
Mayor and City Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is John Kramer. I'm born in Escondido, live in Del Mar, and work in Solana Beach. I represent family businesses, family farms, and real estate owners, including those that are interested in the cannabis space, as it's become a popular topic in multiple states. I've worked in Colorado, I've worked in Oregon, and now in California with families and real estate owners that are interested, that want to learn more, and I help them as a consultant. I've watched this market unfold in Colorado and Oregon. I've seen that in spite of what seemed like well-founded fears and scare tactics against cannabis use, that teenage use did not go up, opioid use went down, real estate values actually increased, industrial areas in parts of towns where the cannabis industry was relegated because they were not accepted in the main parts of town to protect the kids. Those areas went up in value, those properties were improved, landlords improved their properties, tenants were asked by the city to improve the properties, and there was a great increase in value in the communities. Those are some of the things to consider, and I do believe that city revenues will more than be offset with the costs of enforcement and regulation that are required by some of the positives that come to the city of Oceanside. I saw Oceanside have one of the most thorough, in-depth, and comprehensive ad hoc committee reviews of any that I've seen. I was very encouraged to see that for the citizens of North County. I realize there is a shortage, as some of the speakers have said, for medical cannabis sources in this community and in the entire North County area. And I thought that the city of Oceanside had come up with a very thoughtful ordinance that would provide a minimum of access and provide it in a way that could be enforced by the fire department, by the city police, be closely regulated, and protect the children. I've always believed that is the best approach, and where it's been effectively thought through has been the best thing long-term for the community and has reduced the amount of black market access to the community in general and children in specific. I was disappointed to see the results of the last meeting because I believe it does expose the city long-term to a continued accessibility to black market. And I think more importantly, you're going to have an initiative that is not going to be what you, the city fathers, would want, and it will not be as favorable and as restricted as what the ad hoc committee had proposed. So I'd ask you to reconsider the benefits of what had been proposed by your own city council members. Thank you very much for your time.
We do have one more speaker on this item, Michelle Gomez.
Good evening, council members. Michelle Gomez, Oceanside City resident and candidate for county supervisor. I've heard a lot of discussion over the last couple of months regarding this issue. And one of the things I've been hearing most often is that it can bring jobs, that we want dispensaries, that it's medicinal purposes. One of the things that I haven't heard talked about is that we're seeing a lot of studies and we're seeing a lot of information about using medical cannabis to wean people off of opioid addiction. That's something that's really prevalent in our county and in our state, and it's one of the methods that's being utilized right now to get people off of opioid addiction. Opioids are killing people. Cannabis is not. I'm asking you to please reconsider your position tonight. Thank you.
No further public on this item.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming again. I am hearing you. I have been hearing you for a while. It certainly was unfortunate that the way the committee, the Citizens Committee basically, came about and did not include staffing, did not include a more broader embracement of the concerns of the citizens, and therefore, in fact, address those concerns. It's unfortunate that happened, but here we are. And I've had a chance to think about what we did 2 weeks ago. First of all, I do want to go out of my way to thank staff. Deanna Larson, thank you very much for the work you did in 2 months. It was just like you did so much, as did, I know, Chief McCoy and Chief Robinson. The staff, I couldn't even believe how fast they worked. The original motion was to have to create a committee. I believe did anticipate some staffing. Unfortunately, that was not something that happened. I don't think that, for whatever reasons, that is not what you wanted to do with this committee. You wanted to, put something together, hearing from the industry, from people from the industry, and included everything that possibly could be included. That's my impression as an outsider. Unfortunately, I was not able to participate in that committee. And I know you don't want to accept the Brown Act. It's actually meant to protect the public, so that you don't have 3 council members meeting outside of the public realm. What I believe that has been accomplished, and I am I am especially sensitive to our public health and safety needs in Oceanside. because crime rate was pretty high. The city's reputation was not good. And what we have done with our police department, with our Chief McCoy, who introduced community policing when he came on board. And listen, he came on board after the second police officer was gunned down, an Oceanside police officer. This is real, the sense of having to balance our budgets, having to ensure the public safety of everyone. And when I have our staff say, we cannot give you data on our public safety needs, we actually have spent 61% of our general fund on public safety, 61%. That is how important it is to the citizens of Oceanside. Every time we have a major development, it does not pay for itself in terms of receiving those kind of services, with public safety services being the most costly. So I think what we did 2 weeks ago was take the first steps. I think what we did 2 weeks ago was a compromise. I think that, you know, we're the only city in the North County to have gone forward with a motion that included cultivation, distribution, manufacturing, testing, to be completed within some time after staff has had a chance to look at what possible regulations there ought to be, and pricing or, you know, costing needs to be looked at. So I do feel that we need to go slow in order to be able to protect all of our citizens, to ensure that we don't make mistakes that other cities possibly could be making in implementing this. I also want to ensure that we do, as several people suggested, that we do need to ensure that there be a comprehensive financial study to include social and economic factors, as well as economic and environmental impacts. We need to know that. We need to know how that's going to be paid. And it ought to come from the industry. When we talk about taxing, there has to be a tax. No city has gone forward. None. I had a chance to talk to a council member from the city of Chula Vista, who, as you know, that city has gone forward. But everything is dependent on that tax. They cannot go forward responsibly without a tax in place. So I do believe that this is a compromise. There is access via delivery. We are compassionate here on the dais, but we also have to think about everyone's safety, everyone's health. And for me, it was very difficult. I wanted to, my focus was on doing a demonstration, perhaps 1 or 2 demonstration projects of dispensaries and maybe some cultivation. I had no interest in manufacturing and distribution, none at all. So for me, this is a compromise. This is something that I feel we need to do together as a community, that we need to embrace those that don't agree with us, that we need to stop the negativity that has been so prevalent for these past several months. I understand your frustration, but there's frustration by all of us. I understand your concerns about the health of certain people that you know that are suffering from things like cancer. I have been touched by that several times just this past year. So we need to do this together. We need to to work together. It didn't start off that way. It's time now for us to do it this way. And as an ordinance, we can look at it and see, what works, what doesn't work. If certain neighborhoods are impacted, make sure that there's nothing that, that is cited near that, or address it in whatever way that we need to ensure the public health and safety of every citizen in Oceanside. This is something that is completely new territory for us, as you know. This ought rightly to be a federal issue. There ought to have been research, studies, there ought to be data, and everything is anecdotal. We all have heard stories on both sides. On both sides. And maybe there's 3 or 4 sides, I don't know. But I think that what is before us is the opportunity to work together. And let's see what happens in the next year, 18 months. See if we can somehow guarantee the health and safety of our children as well as the health and safety of patients. So I'm going to move adoption. Thank you.
Councilman Kern.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, since this is a second reading, can we make any changes, or what would happen if we did make changes?
There's 2 ways. If you wanted to make changes, we would have to reintroduce the ordinance, so we'd have to conduct a new public hearing and have a reintroduction, or you could adopt what's in front of you and direct staff to bring back a amendment that you may set forth. Those are the 2 options.
Okay, well then I'm going to second the motion that we adopt the ordinance, but I have some instructions that I want added and directions to staff. Just some of the explanations. The 1,000-foot setback, I take that's our fault. When we talked about cultivation, we talked about we wanted a regulated use, and we called it a regulated use. But we have a definition in our city code what a regulated use is. And when staff looked at a regulated use, they looked at the setbacks for regulated uses and they applied it to the cultivation. Now, I would like that brought back as an amendment to see how we can change that differently at a later date. And I will try to flesh this out. We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants here. Jonathan, can you come down and explain, our development director, we have regulated uses throughout the city, but there's also a process in place that if you come in, say a bar that wants to locate within 1,000 foot of another bar, then we have an appeal process and it goes through staff and it comes. So it's not a hard and fast 1,000 feet. It's something that can actually be dealt with staff and even through Planning Commission and Council. Is that correct?
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council Member Kern, that is correct. Under our regulated use ordinance, there is a provision that allows applicants to request a waiver of that 1,000-foot distance, and those requests are considered on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, so so there's an opportunity there to do that. The caveat is, if you're the second one in, you're the one that's going to have to go through the process of getting the waiver. So whoever's first gets their spot, whoever's second has to go through the waiver process. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and just for a point of clarification, under the ordinance that was introduced by the council, that ability to waive that distance was not included in the ordinance. So it is a hard, fast 1,000-foot rule as the ordinance is written today.
Okay, so I wanted to address that, and I'm going to talk to the city attorney how we can bring that back and to address that issue. So,
okay, so if the motion is, or if your second is to second the motion made by Councilmember Sanchez, we'd have to have the maker of the motion agree to that direction to bring back that 1,000-foot rule.
Well, We're trying to figure this out here. The idea that it wouldn't be an amendment, or we would come back with an amendment to the ordinance and we'd come back at a later date to have a hearing on the amendments.
That's right, but we'd want to include that in your direction tonight, just not from one of you, from a majority of you.
Okay. I think, all right, the maker of the motion, is that amendment agreeable? That we come back and discuss that?
I would just like to go with the motion now and let staff talk to people if there's a problem. I don't know if there's going to be a problem yet. So
the other option would be to just go forward tonight, and then you could agendize it to give us that direction if there's not support here.
Okay, so then I can come back with a council member item, or would it have to come back as a city manager item?
Correct, either one.
Either one. Okay, so we're going to work on that. All right. And we will actually talk about, at that time, if we're going to bring back a council member item about the 1,000-foot setback, we will also talk about the 1 per APM number. I think that's something we need to discuss and to bring forward. Now, when we talk about doing that, and I've always told people, that my fear of an initiative is that we can't make these corrections. When we do this, we make mistakes, and we've already made a mistake the way we did it, but we can correct it in 30 days. What'll happen if it goes to the initiative and it gets passed by the people, we cannot make these corrections without another vote of the people. So this process here allows us to move forward and make corrections as we go. So I will be working on that as we go forward. The other one is, by June 20th, I want the police department to report back to us, and I want a workshop on dispensaries. This year, I am afraid that we're becoming so bureaucratic that it is paralysis by analysis. We've been at this for a year. The police department has known for a year this is coming. I'm sure they haven't been sitting there on their hands. I'm sure they have done some groundwork. So I would like to set, and hopefully I get a second for a separate motion, that on June 20th, which is our last council date before the break, that we meet here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon to discuss dispensaries and get this cleared up before we go into break in July. The idea, I just can't see waiting a year, because the information's out there. I think, we have a very smart police department and very good, and they can analyze these things, and we have reports every month what our crime stats are. I'm sure other cities have the same reports, and it shouldn't be that difficult to go through those reports and find out what a legal dispensary's call for service is. So hopefully, can I make that as a separate motion, or?
I don't think there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, not without the agreement of the maker of the motion, but what you could do is move forward on the motion, and then we could, with the approval of the chair, you can come back and make a motion.
After we vote on this one. So I would like to reserve that time, Mr. Mayor, after we vote on this motion to come back to that. I usually don't get involved in criticizing speakers, but there's been a couple speakers up here that criticized the committee, the ad hoc committee. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're entitled to your opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts. This was a bipartisan committee. And anybody that knows Deputy Mayor Lowry and myself know that we do not play on the same team. Okay? So, and as far as shutting off debate, we had 8 public hearings. Everybody was invited. We listened to North County Coastal Prevention Coalition. We listened to people on the other side. We took all the facts into account. We looked and worked long and hard to come up with what we came up with. And to have people criticize us that somehow this march towards these ordinances were preordained. We didn't know what we were doing when we first started this a year ago. And this was a ad hoc committee that was voted on and approved by the council. And at that time, Mayor Wood was actually, I don't know if he made the motion or second motion, but he did vote for it. So we did everything that was legally possible to do. And we worked really hard to get where we're at today. So I am like you, I am somewhat disappointed that we just can't move forward. I understand that the frustration on everybody's part, but to tell the truth, we got 80% of what we wanted, or what the ad hoc committee recommended. Hopefully we'll get that other 20% by the 20th of June of this year, and we can move forward with some clarity by the end of the year. And there is some urgency on this for me, because I am no longer going to be here after December of this year. I am not running for re-election. My competitor's in the audience. But regardless, whether I go up to the supervisor's race or I'm defeated, I will not be here after December of this year. I would like to see this clarified and done before I leave office. So hopefully we can get this cleared up now. And so with that, that's probably the only things I have to say. But I would like to thank everybody that's participated tonight. And we've always listened to both sides of the argument. We understand the concerns that you have about bringing cannabis into legalization. But the one thing, and I've said over and over again, 57% of the people in California voted for it, 57% of the people of Oceanside voted for it. Our job as public officials is to carry out the will of the people. I keep reminding people I voted against both. I voted against medical back in the 90s. I voted against Prop 64. But our job is to carry out the will of the people and do what they have elected us to do. Those people that say that that the electorate didn't understand what they're voting for, they didn't understand what they were thinking about, that goes beyond hubris. That is arrogance. In fact, that borders on elitism. And I don't think that's what you want in public officials. So, thank you. No. And that's the one thing, this is not a sporting contest. We don't applaud for one side or the other. We're up here trying to make public policy, right? So these are hard discussions. The idea that cheering one side or the other or being disrespectful to either Deputy Mayor or Councilmember Sanchez, it doesn't further the argument, right? Say your case and let's get public policy done and leave the personalities out of it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lowry.
Thank you, Mayor Weiss. Councilmember Kern, I will second your motion when it comes up at the right time. So I have a question, a couple of questions for staff, and I'll start with you, Mr. Borrego, because you're already in position. Thank you. Can you tell me, these are questions about how the reports that came to the City Council after the ad hoc committee quit operating came about. So I'm going to ask, they're very basic questions. I'm going to have one for Assistant City Manager, one for the Chief of Police, and maybe 6 or 7 for the Fire Chief. Well, maybe 3. So my question for you is, what information or resources did you use to conclude that testing laboratories were similar to other uses in the industrial zones?
Deputy Mayor Lowry, essentially I would need to kind of back up a little bit and probably ask you to clarify that a little bit. I just want to make sure that I'm addressing your question correctly, or exactly what concern you may have had in terms of what that decision was on our part. I'm sorry.
That's just a general question. Did you use specific criteria, or did you come back with an opinion to give us what your conclusion was? Because we used that for information that we needed to make our decision.
Yeah, and I'd probably defer to the Assistant City Manager on that, because I was brought in a little bit later into that conversation.
Okay, that's fine.
So, Deputy Mayor Deanna Lorson, Assistant City Manager, Mayor and Council members, staff in that case, myself looked at our zoning ordinance, which contains very specific descriptions of commercial uses and industrial uses, and I looked at those descriptions and the proposed uses to see what was the most comparable in coming up with those recommendations.
Okay. So I have another question that either of you could probably answer. Can you explain the purpose of additional sensitive uses listed in your recommendations? That would be places where children can be found. I'm asking that because
right now, we have markets in the city of Oceanside which are selling CBD products, and I believe that those would be, do we already have sensitive use regs around that? And there are kids who are constantly passing by where these products are being sold in our local stores right now. They're just regular grocery stores, actually.
Deputy Mayor, I can actually answer that question. Okay. So when we were taking a look at these uses that were proposed by the ad hoc committee and looking at them in the context of our regulated use ordinance, which does have separation requirements against certain sensitive uses, it occurred to us that there were other uses similar to those that were already identified in the ordinance that aren't addressed in the ordinance. For example, you regulated uses, there are separations against schools. However, a public library, which may have just as many children in it as a school, is not addressed by our regulated use ordinance. So we went through the thought process of thinking, okay, what other types of regulated uses where you could get a fair number of children should we be addressing in the ordinance that may not be included in the ordinance? And so that was the thought process behind it. It was really just kind of identifying other uses that could potentially have children around them that weren't addressed currently under our ordinance. And so we did expand it on that basis.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Jump in on one quick point I think that needs to be made is those expanded sensitive uses only applied to dispensaries, not to any of the other types of cannabis businesses. So with the amendments that were made at the introduction of the ordinance a couple weeks ago, those have been excised from the ordinance.
Oh. Okay. So I have a question for Assistant City Manager Deanna Lorson. Can you tell me how many testing labs, not manufacturing labs like Spartia, do we currently have in our industrial areas which would be legal to test Schedule I drugs?
Deputy Mayor, that's not an analysis that I have done. Laboratories are permitted use in our industrial zones, but I did not calculate, look at data to see what kinds of labs currently exist.
Okay. Can you tell me what our current vacancy rate is in the two industrial zones, IL and IG? That's a real low number, like 2 or 3% or something.
The most recent data that I've seen as of December 2017, the industrial vacancy rate in the city is approximately 3.3%.
Okay. And do you have any idea what the average square footage is of those spaces?
I did actually prepare some information. Let me find that. In looking at the inventory of vacant space, it'll take me just a moment here, I'm sorry. As of the end of March, there were 29 industrial spaces under 5,000 square feet, 7 between 5,000 and 10,000 square feet, 3 between 10 and 20,000 square feet, 6 between 20 and 50,000 square feet, and 2 spaces that were larger than 50,000 square feet vacant as of the end of March.
Okay, thank you. The reason I ask that is that we, by the proposed regulations that we approved a couple of weeks ago, we will be challenging the occupancy of those spaces with cannabis operations because that's where we've zoned them to go. So that's why I asked about that. So it doesn't seem like we have a lot of space there if it's only 3.3% of our total needs, our total available industrial space. So I have a question for Chief McCoy, and I'm asking this because, as you heard this evening, people are happy to blame us for not asking our public safety officials to come to our meetings and participate with our job that we were doing over that 6-month plus period. And so I'm wondering if you remember that we sent in, my aide Don Green sent 2 emails to you asking if you would join us or send a representative when we took the field trip to the Santa Isabel cannabis facility last year. Do you remember that we sent your office those multiple messages?
I did receive a message from Don Green to go on a field trip, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then when asked about your involvement with the ad hoc committee at the Police and Fire Commission meeting that was a few weeks ago, you referenced us as just inviting you to watch, but we asked you to participate with us because we really needed your guidance. So your response was wait until it's over, and once the council comes forward, then you'll take direction. So that was where I was left with that. So even though we invited you, we couldn't get you to attend, and I understand that. We also didn't have any other officers from your department come in, except there were a couple here on occasion, but they weren't here to formally present information to us. So I'm concerned that we are being vilified at this time for work that we didn't do when in fact we did the work. We just couldn't get the participation that we needed.
Is that a question, sir?
Sort of.
Doesn't sound like it.
I'll ask it again. So, why did you tell the Police and Fire Commission that you were just invited to watch when we in fact invited you to participate?
Honorable Mayor and council members, I don't believe I had an actual request to participate. I did get invited to a meeting. I did send one staff member to one of your meetings.
Okay.
But as far as the police department participating, we were not an integral part of your committee. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I want to move on to a couple questions I have for Fire Chief Robinson. And can you tell me how much different a cannabis shop on fire would be from a tire shop that's on fire as far as your firefighters being able to safely access that and deal with whatever's going on there? Is there a difference in a cannabis shop fire and a fire in a tire shop?
Honorable Mayor, Council, Deputy Mayor Lowry, thank you for the question. I would say, just in the way that you asked the question, there could be a significant difference in the products and the products of combustion. So if, yes, there would be probably a different component to how we would attack those fires.
So I'm wondering if you, because I've talked to people about this and asked, do you think that our fire department is not prepared to deal with a fire where they have to use oxygen, and because tires that are on fire are super toxic, and I have no idea what's inside a surf shop or a cannabis operation, but do you not have the equipment and training to have your firefighters go into those fires, or do we have to look at something completely different?
Deputy Mayor, the cannabis shop is not something that we have here in the city, so it would be something that we would discuss and talk about what the potentials would be. We do have the equipment and the gear to protect our firefighters. There is some literature that talks about decontamination procedures and things that we would have to go through that we may not do at a normal fire, but we do have the equipment for the fire, yes.
Okay, that's great. Well, I thank you all for answering the questions. I have a concluding statement that I want to make, and that is, when we formed the ad hoc committee last year, we formed that to provide access for people who needed it. We didn't do it to bring jobs to Oceanside. We didn't do it to bring tax revenue. We did it to bring access, safe access for people who needed medical cannabis. It's not a party for these people. We had 2 council meetings where we had the room packed with people in wheelchairs, on crutches, on walkers. People had to be carried and put down in these seats. They would speak, and the council members, we were completely surprised that that was the case, that people actually needed medical cannabis for their medical conditions. I believe that we are at crossroads here, that we have to decide what it is that we want to do as a city council. I think we have to take a strong, bold step forward to do what we promised to the community we would do over 1 year ago. And the random pizza delivery guy who's a part-time cannabis delivery guy is not what we want to do in our city.
Deputy Mayor Lowry, your time has expired.
Thank you. So I believe that we will continue to have discussions here in the city, and I'm completely disappointed that we have decided to do the 80% and that we can't do 100. So thank you very much.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 3-2. Lowry, Feller, no.
Councilmember Kern.
Thank you. I got to push the button. Thank you. Thank you. So, like I said, we brought this forward. We have some flaws in it, and we need to correct those. I'm not going to wait a year to correct those flaws. So I would like to make a motion that on June 20th, we come back and have a workshop at 1 o'clock, which would be 2 hours or 2.5 hours before our regular closed session meeting on June 20th, to have the report by the police department, and so we can understand what's going to happen with 3 things. 1, the 1,000-foot setback, 2, the 1 per APN number, and the dispensaries. So I'm going to leave those as broad as I possibly can. So hopefully we'll have a discussion at that time and flesh that out, and then we can move forward. So that is my motion.
I'd like to second that, but I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm looking at my calendar here, and it appears that is a Wednesday, and we do not have a council meeting that day?
I thought we had one on the 20th.
So we're...
Which one? 20th. Yeah,
Oh,
we have one on the 20th.
okay. So the biggest problem is that's my birthday, and I promised myself I would not work on my birthday when it was my 67th birthday.
Tonight is
I was okay with the
city
66th.
attorney's birthday is tonight.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
And he's
Attorney
working
Mullen.
on his
Yes.
birthday.
May we applause?
Okay.
Applaud. So anyway, I'm willing to do it, but it's a big lift for me to come on my birthday to
we all
74
make
hours of
sacrifices.
meetings.
The
So
city
thank you. I
attorney
second that motion.
Who is actually practicing being old, but he's here today to do that. So thank you. So
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 3-2, Sanchez Feller now.
I have been asked to take a short break, so we will reconvene at 7:35.